Picture a penthouse in the Bahamas, in a gated resort where the parking lot looks like a supercar dealership. Inside, a group of 20-somethings in shorts and t-shirts are running one of the largest cryptocurrency exchanges on the planet. They sleep on beanbags at their desks. Their leader is a rumpled man with a mop of curly hair who tells the world he is going to give almost all of his money away. In early 2022, this operation is valued at $32 billion. By the middle of November, it is worth nothing, and its founder is facing the rest of his life in prison. The man was Sam Bankman-Fried, known everywhere simply as SBF. His company was FTX, a crypto exchange, which is basically a marketplace where ordinary people buy and sell digital coins like Bitcoin. FTX made money by taking a small cut of every trade. That is a legitimate and potentially very profitable business. But FTX was not sold as a boring toll booth. It was sold as the safe, grown-up face of a wild industry, the exchange you could actually trust. And the trust was manufactured at enormous expense. FTX bought the naming rights to the Miami Heat's arena. It ran a Super Bowl ad starring the comedian Larry David. It signed Tom Brady, Gisele Bündchen, and Steph Curry as pitchmen. Major League Baseball umpires wore FTX patches on their uniforms. Everywhere you looked in 2022, the message was the same. FTX is here. FTX is huge. FTX is safe. Behind the marketing, SBF had built a genuine aura. He talked about effective altruism, the idea of earning as much money as possible in order to give it away to save lives. He became one of the largest political donors in America. He testified before Congress. Magazines put him on their covers and compared him to the great financiers of history. The $32 billion valuation was not just a number, it was a coronation. But there was a second company hiding behind the first, and this is where the story turns. Before FTX, Bankman-Fried founded a crypto trading firm called Alameda Research. Alameda was not a marketplace for customers. It was a hedge fund that placed huge, risky bets with its own money, run by a small circle of SBF's closest associates. On paper, FTX and Alameda were separate. In reality, they were joined at the hip, and that hidden connection was the fuse. To understand the collapse, you need one more piece, a token called FTT. FTX had created its own coin, FTT, which gave holders discounts and perks on the exchange. Here is the crucial part. FTX itself had minted most of these tokens, and only a small fraction ever traded on the open market. That made FTT easy to move. If almost nobody is selling, the listed price can be pushed up and held high. FTT looked like a multi-billion-dollar asset, but it was an asset FTX had essentially printed itself. On November 2nd, 2022, a crypto news outlet called CoinDesk published a leaked look at Alameda's balance sheet. And the balance sheet was terrifying. A huge portion of Alameda's supposed assets was not cash, or Bitcoin, or anything independent. It was FTT, the token that FTX had created out of thin air. In plain English, the trading firm was propping itself up with the make-believe money printed by its sister exchange. The two companies were holding each other up, and both were leaning on the same imaginary pole. For a few days, the article simmered. Crypto insiders read it and understood the danger. Then, on November 6th, the most powerful man in the industry lit the match. Changpeng Zhao, known as CZ, ran Binance, the largest crypto exchange in the world and FTX's biggest rival. Binance happened to own a large pile of FTT tokens. CZ posted publicly that Binance was going to sell all of it. It was a single message, and it was checkmate. If Binance dumped its FTT, the price would crash. If the price of FTT crashed, then Alameda, which was propped up on FTT, was suddenly insolvent. And if Alameda was insolvent, people began to ask the obvious question: what exactly was FTX standing on? The confidence that FTX had spent hundreds of millions of dollars to build began to drain in a matter of hours. The price of FTT fell, then fell faster. But the truly fatal event was not the token price. It was the reaction of ordinary customers. People who had money sitting in FTX accounts, believing it was as safe as a bank, suddenly got scared and did the rational thing. They tried to take their money out. all at once. This is a bank run, the oldest failure in finance. A bank, or in this case an exchange, is only safe if everyone does not ask for their money on the same day. And here is the detail that turned a panic into a catastrophe. When customers went to withdraw their funds, the money was not all there. FTX had taken customer deposits, the money people believed was sitting safely in their accounts, and secretly funneled billions of it to Alameda, which had gambled it away on risky bets, venture investments, real estate, and political donations. In roughly 72 hours, customers tried to pull about $6 billion out of FTX. The exchange could not pay. On November 8th, FTX quietly froze withdrawals. Millions of people watched their account balances lock up, their savings suddenly untouchable behind a screen that would not let them press the button. For a brief moment, there was a lifeline. On that same day, CZ, the very man who had triggered the run, announced that Binance would step in and buy FTX to save it. For about 24 hours, it looked like the industry giant would absorb its dying rival. Then Binance's team looked at FTX's actual books. On November 9th, Binance walked away. Its statement was polite and devastating. The problems at FTX, it said, were beyond anything it could help with. Reporting soon made the scale clear. There was a hole in FTX's finances of around $8 billion. That was customer money that was simply gone, spent by Alameda and never coming back. On November 11th, 2022, FTX, Alameda, and more than 100 connected companies filed for bankruptcy. Sam Bankman-Fried resigned. In his place came a veteran named John J. Ray III, the man who had cleaned up the wreckage of Enron. Ray had seen the worst corporate frauds in American history up close. His verdict on FTX became famous. Never in his career, he wrote, had he seen such a complete failure of corporate controls. There were no proper records. Company money ran through personal accounts. Expenses were reportedly approved with emoji reactions in a group chat. The reckoning came fast. In December 2022, SBF was arrested in the Bahamas and extradited to the United States. His inner circle, including Alameda's chief executive Caroline Ellison, pleaded guilty and testified against him. In November 2023, a jury convicted Sam Bankman-Fried on 7 counts of fraud and conspiracy. He had taken billions from people who trusted him and used it as his own. In March 2024, he was sentenced to 25 years in prison. There is one strange epilogue worth knowing. Because certain crypto assets the bankruptcy estate recovered rose sharply in value afterward, the people running the cleanup were eventually able to repay most customers the dollar value of what they had lost. But that is an accident of a rising market, not a rescue. The money customers thought was safe was gambled away years earlier. They were made whole by luck, not by design. So what actually killed FTX? Not a hack, not a market crash. FTX died because the safe, trustworthy exchange on the billboards was a lie. Underneath the Super Bowl ads and the stadium naming rights, customer deposits were being quietly handed to a hedge fund that lost them. All it took was one leaked balance sheet and one rival's tweet to reveal that the emperor had no reserves. In 8 days, the confidence evaporated, and with the confidence went everything. The lesson of FTX is brutal and simple. A company can spend a fortune making itself look safe, and none of that spending makes it safe. The only thing that ever did was the money actually being there. And at FTX, it wasn't. Next time, we open up a fraud where the product itself never even worked. The blood testing company that fooled Silicon Valley for years. Subscribe.